So we'll start with the Heart Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did he hear it one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on Masavaja mountains in Rajgira together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasapa Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasapa Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasapa Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon like this correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition, factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extension of ignorance and so on up to including no aging and death and no extension of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on the dwelling perfection of wisdom. The mind without obscuration, without fear, having completely passed beyond error, they reach the aim point of nirvana. All the Buddhas in 103 times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasapa, should train in profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasapa Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasapa, Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. I prostrated the gathering of the kidneys in the three chakras, a divine and holy yoga of using space, by powers of clairvoyance and magical emanations, look after practitioners like a mother her child. Akasamana tacha akasamana bedukas. Akasamara tacha akasamara pe tayata om gate gate paragate para samgate bodhisoha. By the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. Shintun Koriya Soha. May all negative forces opposed to the Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. And may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here and right now. 사시 베기
조심해 람 산계신도 이로구나다 신랑주발수 구르라나 멘달라가니야다야미 상기 저단 소지 정론라 찬주바르 다니 겹순지 다기 취시 기비 초능기 졸람베시 상기 주바라쇼 상기 저단 소지 정론라 찬주바르 다니 겹순지 다기 취시 기비 초능기 졸람베시 상기 주바라쇼 상기 저단 초진 전능라 창조 바르 당의 접순 다기 취시 기변 초능지 졸람변 상기 주바라쇼 강기 투진이 손에 따와 덤지 방비처를 담비 춘된제 거듭 켈라 창세로 Good morning everyone. Welcome back. I hope so you will enjoy holiday.
And that you didn't get arrested. Was it hard coming back? Did you drive a flat? Okay.
Some years.
So we have a venerable visiting monk here with us today. So Geshe is extending his welcome to you.
대단한저 야수 시월에 전주 들려오지바 오빌레오티 and 토니 드고요리스.
We've been looking at the 10th chapter in Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. The chapter is teaching dedication.
그래서 나카도 사제로도 쉬바나 장일기 동을 쉬어 오와세요. 장일기 동을 쉬어 오와.
Now, looking at where we are in the text, so we're looking at extensive explanation of the dedication, and we began with dedicating for the welfare of others. The first point in this section is dedicating for mundane purposes. Now we are now looking at point B in this section, which is dedicating so that the suffering of the lower realms may be pacified. Now, in looking at pacifying the hell realms suffering, first point, point A, dedicating so that much suffering may quickly be pacified. We're going to pick up today from the second point in this section, which is pacifying the suffering of the cold hells, in the first line in verse 5.
어디에서다 디치디게 당부 지피리아 문진 치고야도 장렬기 동ар세지 장렬기 동ar디 지단 장위게 동ar지 간조 직대 밀야 용기여러스로 단 직대 밀예비기 장위 동ar 텔레페 아니 다슈크쳐 균 쇠무등인 그 장, 동아직 요르스는 다디 디 요르스 안디 아니 장녀 왔다 냥그 요르스 어딘디직 송고로 왔어.
So first, with respect to the suffering of the cold hells, If you wonder, is there anything that is more intense than the cold that we experience as human beings in this human realm? Is there something that is unbearable, so unbearable that is much colder than the cold that we experience here in this realm? Well, there is, such as, for example, the cold in the cold hells.
Tere tenzata odusya ondita ona dongar di ta nyewa watsok ro thanyer di karsa thang wi dongar di ani thanyer watsogi ta nyungures di pena ani ngazo thang wi dongar di ani mi nyungdos ro ona ta khandas nyungures la ondi dipa goshe jagosar sangudus ro ngazo ya lu nga 익섬 요원자 조디 아니 르다 이니보디 차그도스 다 르다 이니 파치는 시바이나 아니 장위 동가디 슈크체슈디 르토니 용야지레마도 아니 샘도니 용야지 레마도스라.
So this suffering of the suffering of being cold is here attributed to the suffering of the cold hells. Now, we also experience the suffering of cold. How do we experience them? Well, of our body, speech, and mind, we can mainly speak of the suffering of cold experience on a physical level, but also on the mental level. But of the two, the physical and mental, the strongest suffering that we experience, suffering of cold, is obviously experienced on a physical level.
데디자다 다 루토는 연구 여바나 원나 미기 아니 미참로기 로 류영인기 다 미들 할 소바 탐지기 장위 동아디 연구를 했으나 디 연구 여 말했어.
But then this suffering of the cold that is experienced on a physical level, is it experienced by everyone, by all gods and men? No, not all of us experience the suffering of cold.
딘자다 다 가르쳤는데 다 류 개발하고 여바디 류 개발 토니 아니 피기 장위 동아 사위 동아 라 다 간지 동아 마부 쇼치 아니 류 개발지 토니 아니 동아 떼기 여바디 다 시부쇼레스 라.
That has to do with the particular disposition of the body. In that, experiencing heat or experiencing cold also has to do with the particular constituents of the body or the particular circumstance of the body.
텐자당 르려야 아니 리니 체고야 라 루치디 루코란 동화 그란신 반자 안디 피기 깬다 태온디 동화도 슈크체를 로고 대바치 루 리치 코 ngazutan dolula shabaina ani yilu segore ani ngalula shabaina gimi lu segore o detsu gipigi ani dugdenli ro ani chuba mayimbainza ani luti toni ani dungha detsu zawni ni nyongo yo maras tanganzu ludi lu khoran dungha le chubainza ani di nyongo yo bachi chade yo badita Siburesra.
So we need to make a distinction between two types of bodies. Well, we have a body that is the nature of suffering. And when a body in the nature of suffering encounters certain conditions, suffering increases. But then there are other types of bodies. If you look at it from the viewpoint of the Sutra tradition, there is a mental body. If you look at it from the point of view of the Tantric tradition, there is a body that is called an illusory body. Now, there's two types of bodies, a mental body and an illusory body are not bodies in the nature of suffering, and therefore they are not subject to pain. But the one that we discuss here, for example, this body of the house or our bodies, which are regarded as bodies in the nature of suffering, when they encounter certain conditions, pain and suffering do arise.
데르다 딘지 르드다 아니 주당 것도 시바나 다 데니 단 남산지 위치 띵 서비스 로고다스라 아니 피길이야 지 로종 띵 사보지 마시바나 용해 매교치 라 라트에 매교치 데니 다 류 켜바듯이 온디 아니 인지 민지기 비기 아니 덴시기 균제근 도당 기 럼바디 인지미 신고야지 딘지레도스라.
So then if you wonder, what is the state of the body? How did it come to be? What is the way in which it is established? You can see that within the Buddhist tradition, there are always ways of going more and more subtly into the understanding of the makeup of different bodies. And without really looking into that deeply, without studying this material, it will be difficult to get a very deep understanding of the makeup of the body as presented in the Buddhist tradition. We're not going to see it, but here, when we look at those levels of sufferings, we consider the levels of suffering that are evident to us.
대리된상안서 남산지 위치디 아니 가니 셰바이나라 아니 칼라다 마순나 가니 소자바히나야 tuk사디 뎀바실레 tuk데바식 로 뎀바식 싸워디 아니 뎀바니 다 뎀바니 레테니 아니 람탑시니 람탑시니 레테니 데부꾸니 그럼바디 남산지 위치 비기 다지 닝따브로치 어디차가도 아스라.
And to understand that the nature of the body, what we can do is to look at that from the viewpoint of the Four Truths, so on the basis of the Four Truths as taught by the Buddha. So it is, in some sense, you can say that here we start to relish the flavor of the Dharma. If you wonder if there's something that we can latch on, well, that would be something that could be latched on from the viewpoint of the Four Truths, on the basis of the Four Truths. And we begin with, first of all, studying the Four Truths. And also the Two Truths, which form the basis. Then the two parts of method and wisdom. And it depends upon that, the two resultant bodies of Buddha that can be attained. This is the essence of the Dharma of the Buddha.
다카도 시바나 장외 냠다로 장일기 동을 시와라요 뭐 갑들이야 장외 냠타비게 아니 심젠남 아니 초톱쇼세 트디 만주비게 존식 난기 트드 마임바 아니 데비 트레라 자니 소야디 다 야자자탐바 아니 딘지 용해 여바디 차기도 왔으라.
So the first line in verse 5 says, may those wretched sentient beings that are wretched due to cold, such as, for example, of the cold hells, obtain warmth. Not just heat amongst the four elements, but just this warmth that is also attributed to a state of mind that is happy, that is well.
들어다 아니 데비우트디 조 샘도니 뇨 톱고연자 아니 랑기 비기 로종당디 삼로당당치 비기 오니 니바이나 아니 동ар 글룰레 먹어봐 비기 다지 일료엄 아니 귤리 딘디지 톱제니 아니 가월데 가를 두 가른 통바이나야 아니 대와마도 동ar 짜니는 용 먹어봐 아니 샘 대와 바시기 돌아야 네투야지 용구여라스라 물론 야타두고데 딘지자기도스라 자민냠다 조톱쇼스.
So of those two levels, body and mind, the most significant to us is the mental level. So here we wish those living beings, those sentient beings, to attain mental happiness. So not to take a body not to take a rebirth in a body which is in the nature of suffering, but also to attain a body that is more than that, a body in the nature of mind, so that whatever that body might encounter, whatever is seen by such a body, do it be no suffering, no pain, but still long-lasting happiness and well-being, only happiness and well-being.
그래서 대변한 추르잖아 소비기 장일 균이 예니 장비 냠타바 남 대화 기비 트토바 shows.
Yetzirah Rinpoche's commentary to this line says, may those burdened by the cold of the 8 cold hells of blisters and so forth attend the warmth that will generate bliss for them.
다 지구바르 숨바디야 찬일기 동을 시원 것에 다 지구바르셔서 간지 아니 단다 찬일 찬일 비기 사위 동을다 참위 동을 세대기 주디 아니 종위 토니 로 종위기 비기 사단til레샤 디 뇽이 디 아니 딩기 아니 류던 체니 아니 뇽구여바치 어 딜리차기도 딘자다 디 마용야 디기 탑조디 다 류지오자이트 로 류지오자이트레도스 류지오자투바나 샘 가왈라 투바이나로 아니 장외기 율다 아니 테바이난자 아니 사비기 유단 테바이난자 비 율 가르다 테바이나야 아니 샘기 통수 디치고 마도비기 아니 믹스된 로기여서 말했어.
Now, when we move on to the next section, dedicating so that the suffering of the hot hells may be pacified, we progress. We move on in a similar fashion, exactly in the same way. So, we not only wish for those who are afflicted by the suffering of heat that they will experience happiness, but we wish them also to experience mental happiness and well-being, so that if one exchanges the body is changed for another type of body, like for example a body in the nature of mind, then one might see certain states as evident. One might encounter heat and cold and so forth, but on a physical level, since the body is called the body in the nature of mind, this body will not experience pain. There would be happiness and well-being.
Pena semlaya pena nganzu tachi ani meg ani jiro meg ridindi laya ani tebatan pi pugalaya me parsha yuni le tebayina ani pi me thon zamma to bi tela tenigi dongar nyonsu chawni yo marastara sem gi samju tele ta lula chewondigi ta 아니 베기 뼈가는 매발사 유대 룰레 태반의 슈츠 베기 아니 동안 용대치 진짜 아니 동아디 주 루토는 용구여 봐. 로 사장 그 동아디 루토는 용구여 봐디 시우레스로.
So not being affected by heat and cold once you attain a body in the nature of mind, you can say that it's like, for example, when you just see a mountain of fire, or when you see a glowing stick of incense, a burning stick of incense, if you just see those phenomena, your mind doesn't experience pain. But if your body comes in contact with that, even as far as just one burning stick of incense, of course, you will experience the pain of being burned.
다 피기기 샘리야 베나다 남주슈데다 아니 셴네다 땡인즈라 소바 어딘디 쮸니 아니 다 가부디슈나데다 이지란싱 그 루직 쮸투바이나 루직 쮸투바이나 다 가드이는 주베 아니 데베기 트지마도 샘 데베기 트지마도 루 동안 용거야지 끼직자면 용거 말아왔어 딘자 아니 뭐는 게 조디 딘디지터버 쇼스 로 전장고마디 뜻송고요레스.
Which means that here, when we think of what we actually dedicate for, we dedicate for the progress in one's spiritual development, so that shamatha, calm abiding, will be obtained at some point. And on that basis, in the future, we will be able to also attain a mental body. And when we will give rise to a mental body, that mental body will not be experiencing pain. There will be only happiness or only well-being. So this is what we wish for those living beings to, in the future, can say, may they be able to attain a mental body, so that there will be no physical suffering, no mental suffering, but long-lasting happiness and well-being.
다들이 딘디기 냠nen디 베나 아니 땡인진다 직신에다 비다 직담에 타라로 소바 아니 곰치니 론교화다니 아니 이 일루 드비아기 아니 냠렌디 로 무수 제바이나야 무수 드바이나야 아고 드비 기여바치 제마다야 민가시기 아니 드브나 드기 여바지다 가시기 드브나 드무시와 딘디치 싸우니네 레모도 타고 치 gyurrin려다 아니 치 딘디기 켜바 용거를 마도비기 아니 수 드브나 아니 토브롱인 바치 딘자 아니 다치 둔줄에 깨바다 이마이나 다 둔줄된 코랑라다 드브투고 마다이나야 깨와 제보 잡치니 드브야그 거고 용 식바치 인자 탐제 딘디치 아니 담이 냠탑이 좋다고 쇼세기 물론디 심전 탐절이야 드기 여바진자 물론디 얘기도 하시라.
In the stages of our practice, we cultivate the concentration that is a Kamabadin concentration, Shamatha concentration. Then we develop wisdom that realizes selflessness. And on the basis of these different parts of the practice that we develop in sequence, we can attain a mental body, so that whatever we practice, if it's oriented towards those stages of the practice that we've just mentioned, concentration, calm abiding, wisdom, the wisdom of selflessness, and so forth, the mental body can be attained. Everyone can attain a mental body. It's not that it is an exclusive attainment to only some beings that can do it, whereas others cannot do it. Animals, for example, being an animal cannot attain a mental body, but upon death, when the state of rebirth changes, if they attain a body that has the favorable conditions, also they can attain through practice a mental body. And therefore, when we think of the aspirations or the dedication that we develop here in this chapter, when we dedicate sentient beings to be free of cold and heat and so forth, we do that on the basis of recognizing that they have the ability to do so.
대다 숨바 찬예기 동을 시원고라시 잔주sem비 총이기 뜰리 총이 주 동을 시원고다. 니월 그 년콜 동을 시원다. 년이 우시다. 년콜 동을 시원고스. 당부 잔주sem비 총이기 뜰리 총이 주 동을 시원고니 잔주sem비 뜬전리 총이 주원 타이기 사회 냠타 세월쇼스.
So when we continue with this section dedicated so that the sufferings of the hot house may be pacified, there are 4 points to this section, dedicating so that dhammas have risen from the clouds of the bodhisattvas to accumulations may pacify suffering, pacifying the suffering of the adjoining hells, the actual site of the hells, and dedicating so that other sufferings of the adjoining hells are pacified. We begin with the last 3 lines in verse 5. Let's read through that verse. It says, sorry. May those wretched due to heat be cooled by the infinite rivers arising from the great clouds of the bodhisattvas.
어디래다 잔주sem비 총이 있어야지. 잔주sem비기 총이기 뜰리 총이 동을 시원고 잔주sem비 총이 있으라온디 다 디고고라서라 총세야지 규 총세야지. 아니 규슬라온디 제부질라 되니다 샤그연자 안 제부디 아니 타두고 꼴래야 산기 꼴래야 샤니 아니 꼰니기 아니 토모마이비 규텔래야 아니 총이스 어딘딜라고도서라 수구다 주구니 주구기 토모마이비 규세나문도 아니 조이 규텔래야 아니 소놈기 초다 아니 주구 주시기 아니 조이 규텔래야 아니 이시기 초스 어디니 다 비 진들이야 빼자지니 추진래야 빼자지니 아니 딜리 총위 추위 아니 사회 냠타기 디 세워쇼세 물론 딘디게도 왔어.
Now there's 3 lines coming under the heading of dedicating so that dhammas arisen from the clouds of the bodhisattvas to accumulations may pacify suffering. So the bodhisattvas to accumulations refer to the accumulations of cause and conditions contributing to the 2 bodies of Buddha. So we have the two accumulations, the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of exalted knowledge or exalted wisdom. So the accumulation of merit is the accumulation that is mainly responsible for attaining the form body of Buddha, the Rupakaya. The accumulation of exalted wisdom is responsible for mainly accomplishing the Dhamma body of the Buddha, the Dhammakaya. So this section says, dedicating so that the Dhammas arisen from the clouds of the Bodhisattva's two accumulations, resulting in the states of Buddhahood, and the Dhamma that arise from the state of Buddhahood may pacify suffering.
There the things that Tindriki Sonila Deni, Tindriki Sonila Deni, and it don't the cell Tuguros, that this Seva Chivalaya, and it give any Sony Budi, Drugogros, that you Sony drew on the and it changes him because Sonum so kind of sagore, changes him be issue so kind of sagores. Or Dirada, Dinza, D Yabuji Sautubana, and then Jebu Piggy, and it Savi Nyam Tabati, and it Dunkanti said to Yadi, that Tetum Son in Meva, the Ros.
That is the case, you might wonder, if the two accumulations and the dhammas afforded by them can purify suffering, then we need to accomplish those two accumulations. So how do we do that? The question arises. If we accumulate those two collections, the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of exalted wisdom, exalted knowledge, we can make sure that sufferings are extinguished.
That's one of the so tolerant ones that Junju live tamboni chinida, live gave parta, and it's son of Sosadan, changes and be son of Sosadan. Pigita, Dom Gavaina, and Ninji, Chamba, and Deladeni, Chanju Sam Gonsugar, but the son of Sosa to Yanam and Teres.
So as for the two accumulations, to begin with the accumulation of merit, since we started Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life from chapter number 1 to chapter number 8, including, we were looking at the way to accumulate merit through the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta. Through that, we accumulate the accumulation of merit.
How do the Junju Nanola Sondi, so pig, and Darjiniam Gigoni, and Sam Gedang Rimbadi. The sonum Sosadan Yonamenadi, Saksul Yonamenadi, Tichagdos.
And mainly when we look at the practice of equalizing and exchanging self with others as a practice for developing bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, if there is a certain degree of merit that can be accumulated through a practice, it will come from mainly the practice of equalizing and exchanging self with others.
There Darjiniam Jitsu, Darjin Yamjigi, Semke Godangi, Gunzendi, and on the Namju Lamachava, Dending Jiman Dinape, Yahut in the Dosra, Pena, Dunga Tramotzamia Minduji, Dela Namian Choshe Meban, Dada Shan the Cabrion, Yomar said that. Dunga Tramotzamia Mendeva. Devan Bashik turned in Yavadi, Randa Shanlaya Kava puts on Yomaris. Tinza Shandekawa Kiva Chingila Sagi, Tony, the Dajin Yamji, Lojang Gutsu, Gubi Gunzen Sodi, and Digiton Sungudas, the Munisujavas.
And when we practice the meditation of equalizing, exchanging self with others, just as the Guru Puja says, there's no difference between oneself and others. None of us wishes even for the slightest of suffering, and we're never contented with the happiness we have. Please bless me to exchange my happiness for this. Sorry, the Tamadi Kasa.
Delanayan Choshiman, Dadash and Kavayomish. Dadash and Kavayomish, and the Gawaki or Chingila.
Oh, yeah, please bless me to, let's say, to become invested in the joy or happiness of others.
The Yishik Sosadan, the two Tony comes to the race, Tomani comes to the Tomani Montrogo, that the two when the Junju Nanolaya, and Sheru Lev Gubadini Tungordineta, Nanzuta, Gemajilia, 쉐야로 진 샤요레스라.
So chapter number 1 to chapter number 8 teach the ways to accumulate the accumulation of merit. And chapter number 9, which is the wisdom chapter, is mainly contributing to the accumulation of exalted wisdom. Now, we will study the wisdom chapter later on. We're not going to completely set it aside. We will get back to the wisdom chapter later on.
데다 디 개체슈 전다 넘버 산지비기 아니 최냠는 징잉래야 딱 비기게 가서다 만주 코베 난게 닝다버디 아니 동반이 이게 내술따야 드렌도스라 따와 디 토네 만로바드 아니 착당기 자와 마리바세기 탑 셴바지 자와니니다 아니 산지 좀 된데 니요 말드니 간주 니 말았으면서 탑디 코너를 되니 아니 자와 마리바세니 아니 델 리게비게 아니 착당도조 또 아니 착당리 게비게 아니 동아 탐지 세주디 아니 동반이 공발 되니 용고원자 아니 동반이 출삼야 디다 이시 초석출 연하면디 아니 동반이 돌아 상당히 드리스 동반이 돌아 가주 상로 땅와 디츠기 아니 손음 라보치 생인디 다 사고르스로 간지 아니 넘버 탐지 캠비 이시 드비아기 규통 많이 받디 안 동반이 되는 상당히 드고요레스.
So the wisdom aspect is taught in the 9th chapter of Shantideva's guide. So, and we do that in order to develop, or we study that in order to develop the accumulation of wisdom so that we'd be able to put a stop to ignorance. So anger and attachment that create so much suffering for us arise on the basis of ignorance. And the way to put a stop to ignorance is through the wisdom of emptiness. So the more we think of emptiness, the more we get involved with the contemplation of emptiness, the greater our accumulation of wisdom becomes. And through that, not only we'd be able to put a stop to ignorance, but also we'd be able at the end to attain the exalted knowledge of all aspects, the state of omniscience of a Buddha.
데르다 니번 닝콜비 동을 시온 거 같이 제디 다라들로미 나서야 텔라가츠 두크르쇼 샤말리 동보양 빠슴신도 총을쇼 탕르는 거와 다당한 바탕 제소 깨니 님빈 제규지 빼먹쳐서 제된 초다기 녀위 섭쇼단 냠그르쇼 세데디.
Now the next section is pacifying the suffering of the adjoining hells, and we have 2 verses in this section, 6 and 7. So looking at these 2 verses, it says, may the forest of the soul like leaves also become a pleasant grove. May the shamali trees too grow into wish-fulfilling trees. May they be beautified by the melodious calls of wild duck, geese, and swans. May the regions of hell become charming due to pools of large and sweetly fragrant lotuses.
다다레다 두수 삼을로 집어지기야 단지 쉬워 난신기로 아니 간주 그 동할 그 류디 여친젤라 베나지 아니 라드 로미 나서파자니 지 갑지 쭈바이나야 베 아니 슈치 마데바 게디아디 아니 류든 바실레데니 지거로 모두 아니 샘토는 루요 마레스 이 류토는 용고요 마레스 학도도 귤룰레 소바 트르세질 데조 자원이니 요 말와스타로 tinza dige dongar di lula tön dongar gu lula töni ani dongar chaja ma dobigi ani shemba kan rem do asra.
Again, similar to what we've said before. If we have a body of suffering, we will experience such pain. We don't need to speak about the forest of soul-like leaves and so forth. We can just look at our body and how we can experience pain, sometimes severe pain, even if we're just pricked by a needle. So if we attain a mental body, or even more so an illusory body, such physical suffering will not be experienced, as these sufferings explained here are based on, first of all, a body, but also a body that is in the nature of suffering.
데리다 딘디 동가 그 류디다 고 차단을 되는 초인자 로 차단 그 통의 대원디기 게 년다 만년세티 로 아니 트심다 마심세 그 사마로 아니 차단을 되는 용샤와지 마도 차단 용수 털생인기 깨우질이야 비기기 간주다 남기 용달을 시대기 지약做了呀 개버지메스 산기기 잘이야 아니 로미심바야 론초도 난그레세디 로초도 교발이야 지 아니 가리 여바난 신기 아니 지 로미심발이야 디용그레스 고 지버지야 개버스키요 말어스 디 차당 비기래야 다시는 심마심 잘샤규 레마도 차당 때니 녜면이 잘샤와 레마도 아니 깨겨야 들이야 저샤 비기 사모스케 메나 아니 깨딜 깨랑레마도 개버지 로마로스라 딘자 아니 차당을 때니 아니 두댕글을 때니 아니 두조다 동아리세데디 용구야자다 딥pan토바이나 딥메버소토바이나 아니 가르체바이나야 남기 이가비기 율츠 데바난신기 찌부지갸레스
개개아이디 카르시?
게 베네타 셰님부 땅송 찍찍 님부 문도 세대저라
Oh,
어디
okay. Experiencing things as unpleasant or pleasant, something being tasty or not tasty. Those things are associated with anger, attachment, and so forth, with afflictive states of mind. And so long as the mind is governed by anger, attachment, and so forth, for that long we will still continue to make the distinctions between what is pleasant, what is unpleasant, what I like, what I dislike, what is tasty, what is not tasty, what is a sweet sounding melody and what's not a sweet sounding melody. Whereas if we rid ourselves of anger, attachment, and so forth, there would no longer be such distinction between what is pleasant, what is unpleasant, in a sense that, for example, for the consciousnesses of the Buddha, even something that for us is considered to be not tasty, not delicious, for a Buddha it would be delicious. There would be no experience of things that are not delicious. Everything would be either pleasant or delicious or melodious sound and so forth. So such distinctions are made or are based on anger and attachment, which do contribute also to the attainment of a body such as the body that we have now, a body in the nature of suffering, independence upon which we have such sensations of pleasant, unpleasant, tasty, not tasty, pleasant sound, not pleasant sound. Those things, those distinctions do not exist within the state of a Buddha, because a body of Buddha is not a body that was formed or created through such afflictive states of mind, anger, and so forth. And therefore, the states, or at least the state of mind that is enjoyed in the state of Buddha, is only a joyous or pleasant state of mind.
어디래지다 제베나 산일기 년권의 예비 라드로미 낙서야 냐비 숨전텔라 자친지 깨미슬 가비슬 두쿠르교쇼스 자기 샤마리 동보타 세르마 소르추두 바 카투드 때바야 군도 군종의 빠슴지 신신도 총을쇼 동보텔라 차타른다 ngor바타다 ngam바다 신소 개념은 제비 진빈 제규직 빼미 트송 채와다 덴비 소다기 냐비 삽쇼다는 냠거쇼스.
It says in the commentary, may the forest with blade-like leaves, which exists next to the hotels, become for the sentient beings their beautiful pleasure gardens, like the flourishing groves of Indra. May the iron trees of the Shalmari forest with the 36 downward pointing thorns be transformed into wish-fulfilling trees, becoming the source of everything desired. May these trees be beautified by the melodious sounds of white swans, yellow geese, and other waterfall. May the places of hell become enjoyable through lakes with greatly scented lotus flowers.
pena chanchu sembi nyamne pena jasi chanchu sem jasim phawa chanchu semba tsugita nyamne ani thombu la le dengi jimba na ani di nesul di karala teni yungu yore kala teni chomare tenji nesu yonsu shiondi teni manzu nyamtabe sumjen so mombi wangi chakdangi wangi 두스베 아니 테메기 코르디기 예비 내수도 세원디다 년진 바식게 되지 마도비 아니 지금 간주 롱제 대학이 아니 네 도sol야 지 착바세다 이물생인데 깨직장 얘기였어 말았어.
Thinking of bodhisattvas and the high-level practice of bodhisattvas, if we wonder how can they practice it, it depends upon what does such high-level practice arises, then we can also compare our state of mind to the state of mind of bodhisattvas. First of all, recognizing how we're still governed by anger, attachment, and so forth, whereas the minds of high-level bodhisattvas are no longer governed by those afflictive states of mind. Attachment and that longing to enjoyable objects does not arise from them in the way that it arises for us.
두 성당원디 당간주 남규 배 아니지 메칸가기 비리야 짜침부스대기 지 론저세다 지 여러다 러 아니지 캄바세다 지 칼라세다 두글로세다 지 어디서 참말로 도스페 14부진 대원디 아니 동할 그 류디기 아니 차진 소르지 마도비게 된 담바 아니 심전 탐제라야 아니 대기 준 퉁인게 진 퉁인게 산기 공반들이야 자원이니 팬도 매주지 그러 안다 디 통고라서 야 전주 삼보수 디시고라서 진짜 난 간주 딘디질이야 차는 로데디다 니제레 마도비 셴바 카리어스라 케게요 말았어.
So looking at the things that we're enjoying, our resources, our houses, the food that we, the clothing that we wear, all of this we can say are those conditions that are used by a body that is in the nature of suffering. Not only those resources are used by a body in the nature of suffering, we also become attached to them. Whereas bodhisattvas, those high-level bodhisattvas, do not have any attachment to those resources. Not only that, also when we consider how bodhisattvas regard living beings, bodhisattvas will indeed, and also Buddhas will indeed have a sense of compassion towards us, those who are still gripped by attachment towards those objects of the senses, those objects of desire.
내가 TV도서 싸우니까 고야 차고 말았어. 아니 칼라고 말에 캄바고 말에 두글로고 말에 로 아니 딱 간지 두수 삼을로 신디 코니 이체도 죽대야기 디 소디 두그댕 류드랜도 왔어. 디 두그댕 류디 다 산지 좀 된데니 이체다 지 야세 찬주 삼바 산내 삼바 첨부 아니 지 키드니딩 기부 용 송대야디 두그댕 레세데
Without the body in the nature of suffering, we will not have to utilize this, the food that we eat, the houses that we live in, the clothes that we wear, and so forth. We will not need them if we will not have a body in the nature of suffering. Those things, food and house and clothing and so forth, which belong to the affairs of this lifetime only, are used only because we have a body in the nature of suffering. And therefore, when we think of the Buddhas, teachings of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Mahabodhisattvas abiding on the great grounds, teachings that are given by those great masters, like the ones that we're studying, the text of which we're studying here, all of them are emphasizing that this what comes with a body in the nature of suffering. And here we develop a sense of compassion to those who have a body in the nature of suffering, wishing them to be free from all of those things.
다만 도스 저기 차봤다 되는 존데 매도 잡을 큐 펜순 춘진대바 대는 대는 제실 매동 펜버쇼스.
Now, the next two verses, 89, come under the heading of the actual side of the hells. May the heaps of coals also become piles of jewels. May the burning iron ground be revealed as crystal flows. May the mountains of mass destruction hell become celestial mansions of offerings filled with sugatas. May the rain of glowing cinders, burning rocks and weapons from now on become a rain of flowers. May the striking of each other with weapons from now on be a playful tossing of flowers.
Terda dizu samalo ta samdan chikpa resro ani solpong sedi pi metayati ani ta doyore shingi shinsigyor ta di o dindri gi nagbo teda ta namgyu rumbuchi resedi pena ta chik ani dorje phalam sel soba ani serda nguda ta chik tzo ta nganzu jigding kamla ya rumbuchi res tsigoras ta dingi bodi ani chik dukja da yahuris tsidedi zu dukdeng lutele teni shegdos ta shegoras ro.
We proceed in a similar fashion in thinking that the heaps of coals, whatever burning material you can think of, either burning forest or burning coal or whatever, may all of these become a piles of jewels consisting of diamonds and gold and silver and so forth. Such distinction between good and bad, as we said before, is done only on the basis of embodying the nature of suffering.
Leta de kenza bedos ro chik rumbuchi res tsachimushu tsigori chik solpong res pe ta dukja tsidde ro ine pe na ngaran so ro ji seba ina niga gi ta chogo nalo ya negro samnar nasa chagra mato chigi dewa jinsha da chigi nasa tansha chigi yomarwas tinza ta dizu samalo chig yewa ro da pi yagduk shia dia di dugding phumbo tele tön sheg yoba ani chig chagdang lo toni ro ta chu chig yimba mato ten ngoma la ya pi dingi la ya jongshi sado le triba zamre mato shemba keba khari yorsro ta chig manhyong ro chig jena zambali ni na lo ya koni manhyong keba des chig di rumbuchi rikse dia di koni nyonyong jin ba za ani metso tongchen bu zde ya ro yong sigros ta tindich mato bi ani shemba kan yo maris ro.
So we make here such distinction between good and bad, positive, negative, between coals, burning coals, and a pile of precious jewels. Still, if we ingest them, if we swallow them, they would be just as harmful to our body. Burning coal or precious jewels will likely to cause sickness in our body. So although we make such distinctions when we think of them in general, with respect to what they do to our body, they're just as harmful. But also, when we think of those two things which we regard as positive or negative, both of them are alike in consisting of the four elements, being a combination of the four elements. Maybe we make such distinctions between good and bad in relation to how common or how rare they are according to the quantities. Maybe because we have less precious jewels, then we regard them as something that is positive, something that is good, something that is precious. But they become as such only for someone that has a bodily nature of suffering. They become as such only through someone that is still controlled by anger and attachment.
Dongjom ro namjan choba shemen kangyur deshe kamar sho sati tagara ra pi manzugi tatsutsam re ma to bi ani chi dongjom ro khanda jin ba ina ya tombani ko yo deba ani chi nyamle ne thombu ji yo deba ina sanji chansam gi shugne surach ra tagara la ya ani shugtu ganza ani shemen kan kyurbares kanji rangi semla töni ro lo이 냠nen 세 통부 질레바이나 동좀 로 초이나야 아니 셰멘 칸타고 교야 나 동좀 로라 베 동한 바식 내사기 캄베소를 차기도서로 어디서만 샘을 두는 조건자 간지 아니 뭐와야디 아니 지 샘기 또비 용데 아니 지 닌지 찬주 샘 쯧비다 동번이 또비 이실어서 딘디 냠네디 아니 탈심바 용야지 된당 엄마디 치기 저단 삼레마도 된당 님보들이야 아니 두주 냠네 탈심바 중용외나 아니 대원 바시 교대야지 아니 가른 통나야 아니 가르다 태바이나야 아니 대위 차기는 로대야지 아니 소차 순저중 통대바이나야 아니 니엔도 통대야지 야오름지 뒤다 손대 야차 야다마 용구여서리스로
May the burning iron ground be revealed as crystal floors. May the mountains of mass destruction hell become celestial mansions of offerings filled with sugatas. So indeed, if we, for those that have developed a realization of emptiness, for those bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, those abiding on the great grounds, for Buddhas having an omniscient wisdom, those places, the crushing hell and so forth, for them are not places of suffering. For them, through the realization of emptiness, they do not experience suffering even in those places. So here, when we make such dedications, when we think of how it'd be like for bodhisattvas and for Buddhas to experience such places, such as the mass destruction hell, burning iron ground and so forth, for them there would be no suffering, and that would be afforded, that will come to pass because of the realization of emptiness. So when we make such aspirations here for the sake of others, what we are wishing for is sentient beings to attain, first of all, to develop the wisdom that realizes emptiness, but to reach a state of perfection with the wisdom, to reach a state of perfection with wisdom realizing emptiness, so that on that basis there would not be physical suffering, so that whatever they encounter, be it good or bad, they will, whatever they encounter, whatever they see, they will only experience mental joy. They will, or as his honor says, whoever we meet, whoever we come across, will always see that person with a sense of affinity, with a sense of closeness.
네, 단지 타마들이야 펜수 최긴 대바 대한 테니스에서 매동 펜버 쇼세데 다라 두댕 류드 여츠베질이야 아니 펜술이야 최근 데모고야 매도그 슈리 땅바이나야 둥하테데지 용거로스 매동 팡바이나야 히로 파츠 매도 또르마이나야 맨나 미글서버 매도 투바이나 아니 둥하 리그르마도 티 가와 용거 마로스 다 두댕 류드 토르체니 이르튼 퉁인기 아니 강사지 차바이나 가리 유바이나야 즉 서다 만다바 비기다 즉 매도다지 교르마도 두디 둥아치 택 말았어 chen 가리 유바이나야 그 르라 아니 르 이르 르든 투여자 가야 차가 말았지 매도 유발을 하지 차로 그러서
And verse 9 says, may the rain of glowing cinders, burning rocks and weapons from now on become a rain of flowers. May the striking of each other with weapons from now on be a playful toasting of flowers. So again, experiencing pain with that comes from striking each other with weapons is on the basis of a body and the nature of mind. Is a result of body which is in the nature of suffering. So long as you have a body that is in the nature of suffering for that long, there will still be situations in which we experience suffering. And even if someone is showering you with flowers, even that can for you become a source of pain, a source of suffering. So think of someone not just kind of showering you with flowers, but actually striking you with flowers or trying to throw them very forcefully on you. If they enter into your eyeball, if they pierce your eye and so forth, even that can cause you pain. So here, when we make those aspirations for the sake of others, we keep in mind that we're wishing them to develop a body in the nature of mind. to rid themselves of body that is in the nature of suffering, because so long as we have a body in the nature of suffering, for that long, they will still be suffering for us.
인자다 간지 응호와디 물론 타투바디 아 셈바상보 잔주고 셈라 때니 아니 심전 탐지기 쳐줬다 아니 산기 공부 톱두고 쇼세기 물론 디나라야 누구고요라 디난 누구어스라 아 젬바카이 말다.
So when we then develop a kind-hearted state of mind, bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, with a wish to attain the state of Buddhahood, all of those states of mind are subsumed within the process that leads to the development of a mental body.
베나디나 다 로쳔부니 수 아니 투치니 파랄레야 츠르바이나 동아 쇼지 용걸 세디아디 룰르테니 용고도스 두딩 룰드메나 아니 이이란징 류기 쟁기 비기게 아니 깨우 담바츠 아니 제무그 사단 남니기 파랄레야 츠르나야 동아 카브스삼이 용고 말아서라 텐자 두딩 류 바실레테니 아니 동아들이 용구여바디 갸차 갸다마인자 아니 가도 예나야 아직 두딩 류디 켄자 콜데니 총두 디 칸스 싸메 소고도 어 딘지 성단의 간지 아니 덴시 냠링 톨바 로고 여바디 갸차 갸다마리스라.
When it says in verse 8, may the mountains of mass destruction hell become the celestial mansions of offerings filled with sugatas. The description of this type of hell, when beings are crushed by boulders or by two mountains that join together, if you have a body in the nature of suffering, you will experience suffering from that. Whereas if your body is a mental body, there would be no physical suffering for you, even when two mountains are crushed together. So again, here we're wishing living beings to be free from a body in the nature of suffering. And when we wish them to be free from that suffering, a body in the nature of suffering, we wish them that on the basis of the four truths.
대단 제나 찬일기 멤버의 손본 대양 렌첸 하조기 본부 규칙 자식이 사실된 이동의 세기 사실다워쇼 지 동반자와서 펜술 뒤니 디 파트 쓸때 점버집이 로 남자 산기기 최비 심이 칸도 견이 대레 디시기 카워쇼 맨 담마다 도 세바단 천기 잡아대다 대니 손데 매도 잡을 규칙 양수를 소번 펜술 천기 대바된 대니 손데 세무지위 쳐도 매도 펜버 쇼스.
May also the heaps of burning coals in the hot hells become heaps of jewels. May also the burning iron grounds become like a pleasant celestial crystal ground. May the gold-like grinding mountains between which one become crushed, transform into this crystal bathing house filled with ones gone to bliss, the Sugatas. May the rain of fire, leaves, embers, and weapons transform from forthwith into a rain of flowers. May those in the reviving hells, which slice each other with knives, throw instead flowers at each other for fun.
Yeah.
So Victoria is asking if there is a definition for a body in the nature of mind. 이게 란신기 루세딜라 세니요타메 세니요나스.
세니세 믹스기 다직 세니세디 비 다직 쇼르지나라야 케바치기 다디 세니레스 자자이 드리지 고도 아스라 디 딘지장다 문도스.
Now, to begin with, if you wonder, is there a definition that is found in a text in the scripture that defines very clearly with attributes what the defining characteristics are of the body and nature of mind? Well, such definition is not found in the philosophical texts.
간지 다 디게 일루 세나문도 비게 다 귤루세게 chubsurgi karsoda chubdang rimba seshu di gu nga ka shonang la ya legdo asra do nang la ya chik ilu chik sung yor da ina ya di ani tar tu gon di tang zo ani jaw do ji chang song la ya tu go yen za jaw do ji chang song nang la ya da ani bi gyumi lu chubdang zo di ani nga nang la ya sigdos.
Now, as for a mental body, which is a body in the nature of mind, and an illusory body, both of them are taught in, first of all, the sutra system and then the mantra system. But the more precise and clear explanation of this body is found in the tantric system that was taught by Vajradhara, Buddha Vajradhara. So the way to accomplish a body in the nature of mind and what is a body that is in nature of mind in an illusory body is found in a very precise way. In particular, in Highest Yoga Tantra, is taught by Buddha Vajradhara.
Da di tanda roji shaba na peshi dus sha chogores pigi da longsam ngo yemi gi longsam zamle shi chene pigi da ji manzu shelak silawon di ji yalang gi namba yodeng ji su sharia ji goras o dinti gi shawi gi da lusi gorda shawi ludi da ilures ilu said so yi pigi any shishan yi ton su trubja jutelia ilus laudos nganzu lu di pim so di shishasa di pami kodaki juchini and su trubioros.
So from the point of view of this, of the tantric system that explains what an illusory body is, it is explained on the basis of a combination of body, of mind and wind. So in the tantric system, you train in order for the mind and wind to arise in a certain aspect, particularly to make the wind aspect of the mind to arise in a certain aspect, a physical aspect, having arms and legs and so forth, which means that it is established or accomplished by the mind. Our body, which is a body in the nature of suffering, is not established like that. Our body is established from the sperm and ovum that came to us from our father and mother.
Da duzu kal khabu jida tamu shure do asro ina long sem ngon chik sege pi long de chawon dige namgyu nganzu yongda kin jongwa shi tsidege ningi long kin jongwa se de ti dig ragba jilaya shagyo mares ro long se de zu long gi kodin zu di yowa dilya yowi chalaya ani long kin jongwa ti shagoras tinza nganzu sem lunga yisum tsamalola ya yo yungores sema pigi yula po yowat sem yula yobi chadi long lagores inza sem yula yowadan sem la ya pigi yul sabi chani modi ata ngong yeme yimbadi ya drup chogodos drup togodos ro da dinti gi ani jichene ani shilagi nambajing luji sharchuchi yunguyores da tela ro zu tela ani ilusegores da dinti lutela ya ani jongshi rabi gi neji singi zawni yonsig maros ro.
Mind and wind are inseparable entities. They're inseparable in nature. So the wind here is not regarded as the wind as the element of wind, but it is regarded in the system of Tantra as when we speak about wind and mind being inseparable entities, as being the movement quality of the mind, the movement, right? So moving towards an object. When we think of a particular thing, when we consider a particular thing, there is a movement of the mind towards an object. So wind is the movement and the mind is the entity of clear and knowing. And they're a single entity. So in the tantric system, we then train the mind and wind to arise in a particular aspect, a bodily aspect. And as such, since it is still, you can say it is still wind and mind, which are a single entity, there it is impossible for them to be harmed by coarse physical things like, for example, crushing mountains.
다들어다 시번 코비 가서 년 코비 동을 현시 온거니 쇼라메 메동다나 치원다 샤군 시규 루공 메도 군든도 다기 기위 톱기 하이 류톱네 파문남다 힌지 달지 밤니쇼스.
Now, the last point in this section in verse 10 is dedicating so that the other sufferings of the adjoining hells are pacified. Let's look at this verse number 10. It says, may those drowning in the fire like river without ford, the flesh entirely disintegrated and the bones the color of kunda flowers, attain bodies of gods by the force of my virtue, and then dwell with goddesses in gently flowing streams.
terda dig tsigdi 단징이 콘도 슈데 디로 조 간주 일루지 튼 투바이나 동아 용거 마레스 동아 칸 여바티 탐질로 두댕기 샤닥리 트비기 륜딜 때니 아니 차디기 요르세기다 디 갑딩 지 조르조르 차기도 하서라 초라메 메돈다나 치와 샤군 시규슬라운디 다가라 샤달리 트비기다 류 아니 비기 시겔 소바 라 둥가 델드니 용거스 다디 탐제 마용야디 게위 톱기 타일류 톱니세 다기 게위 톱기 타일류 톱니세 게위 톱기 타일류드 카르스나 다 일류틀레 샤고그레스 라 디톱니 다데레 아니 비기게 다지 하달 하모세디 고 민짱고 토니 샤바인자 지 샘라야 카르소 다지 샤르zamri 디 렌지 타긴 밤네 쇼세 야자야다마다 용초고레스티.
So this verse, moreover, Geshe reinforces his way of explaining these verses as seeking to attain a body in the nature of mind, a mental body. And if we attain a body in the nature of mind, we will no longer experience the sufferings described in this section, whereas so long as we have a body that is in the nature of suffering, we will still continue to experience suffering. So how does this verse, you could say, strengthen Geshe's assertion with respect to mental bodies? So it says, may those drowning in the fire like river without ford, their flesh entirely. So the flesh of the body of flesh and blood, the flesh entirely disintegrated in the bones, the color of kunda flowers, attain bodies of gods by the force of my virtue, which means that may they attain a body in the nature of mind, a mental body by the force of my virtue, and may then dwell with goddesses in gently flowing streams. So when we say may they dwell with gods and goddesses and so forth, these are, you can say, are only established by mind. In essence, what we wish them is to be free from a body in nature of suffering and to attain a mental body, attain bodies of gods by the force of my virtue, and then dwell with goddesses in gently flowing streams.
텐자다 도 somtam바나 간주다 야스치모 시월레기 비기 쫀주 아니 장주 샘 존수 짬 마힘바 동하기 내용수 조버기 아니 냠랭기 코 추지니 아니 야와도지 창기다 지 타두기 공발라나메바디 투라 샤치니 다 쫀주 송고여바디 베스우 차기도 왔으라.
So if we think about it like that, Geshe reckons that rather than thinking of Shantideva's guide to Bodhisattva way of life as just giving us just instructions on the way to develop bodhicitta, we can regard this text as a text that includes complete instructions coming from both Sutra and Tantra, leading us to the unsurpassed state of Vajradhara.
제베나노야 초주 코위 추라 매바 매단 자위 난도 지원 다 샤군 시원 규르공 매도 군딘 도던 교와 남장 다기 기위 톱기 사일류 푸숨 푼속 톱니 사문 남다 흰지 추기 지워 달진 밥지 제위네 침바쇼스
May also those sinking in the wrathful boiling waters of Vaitarani, the bankless river of ash and boiling water, those whose bones with the flesh boiled off are in the color of the kunda flower, attend the perfect body of a god through the power of my virtue, enjoying themselves with goddesses in a bathing pool. Shall we leave the text here for now? Dila, So does it mean that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for example, going to the hell realms, miserable realms, hell realms, to help other living beings, will they see things different to those who are actually caught in those states? Will they see things differently? Will they experience things differently? Or is it that they see the hellish states and it doesn't affect them? Dila Sangetan Chanchis and Potenzu Nyawan la Hewaina Nyawa ken Nyawa pa tenso Hasiwaina Ni Nyawa pa dawo Konso sitan di Nyawa dawo Chagirbes Then a tontan di Tsowan Yontan dawo Chirbes
초nyong마라스라
ine Chukare now the Dalan de Yaman Kanton di Dalan Tongirbes
여기다 매 추추다 통촉으로 왔어. 아, 이내 간주 매라 태원디 동아지에 출라 태원디 동아지에 딘디기 소디 뇽그스라고 말았어. 야양 지금 간주 난신진 비 깨와 지치네. 아니 녀월 droga 딘디마 산지장을 갖도 있나다 뱅 가수시원나지 랑틸레야 규르라 샤와 난신기 식 두고로서.
It is while it is possible for Buddhas or for Bodhisattvas to see those states of existence as they are, as other living beings see them. For example, if others see fire, if others see water, they will also see fire and water. Still, do not be affected by fire and water in the way that other living beings caught in those states of existence experience them. So they would not experience suffering of being burned or the suffering of being tossed here and there by water and so forth. Such suffering will not experienced by them. Dila 근데 나서 다른 이사 출라치 배지 돌아. 디 타다니라든 렌치
제딱다. 야고.
All right, so just before we do that, so during the 15th of Sakadawa, Geshe and I went down, and also Kunpen went down to a Sri Lankan temple at Brisbane. And the abbot of the temple called Geshe a few days ago, and he said that his father passed away about a year ago. And because of COVID-19, he wasn't able to go to Sri Lanka to attend to the last rites of his father. So the first anniversary of the passing away of his father is coming up on the 26th of this month. And invited Geshe, and also he said that if other monastics from the center want to join him for the some prayers probably for the first anniversary of his passing away, then we are all welcome. So that would be on June 26th. So Geshe is planning to go down, and anyone else wishing to join us, please do.
Yeah.
Jason. So you're wondering if bodhisattvas develop a mental body, is that conjoined with the form body? So that if the form body is damaged, will or killed, let's say that the form body dies, or if it is killed and so forth, will they have no longer a mental body, or will the mental body be damaged and so forth? Dila chanchasamba tenso igi ranshin gilu tobdu the sugi pombo tangi to girves kulampeshe den di lu dila tenet to girves kese lu di tendu jubaina lu di la nevaina yana shiwaina sevaina dila sovayan igi ranshin gilu yan layan new yon sigirves
Ludele deni chugor songrada.
no
Manzugi migi ludi zawigi dunga granji dugden granji imbane na Quran keju yan tomo mai bachik any namjun tomo mai ba triyagi any nibachik any ludi tonita ragonzo ludi deni chugores ludi deni chumandi ludi kosa tagarala ya ne tugres sonyores and ludi and torondi and pajogi ludi tormogoyach ranja ne tuyach o dindijik sungudo asra.
So first of all, it is said that a mental body, a body in the nature of mind, is attained on the basis of this body that we have now. So in that sense, although we regard this body as being a body in the nature of suffering, you can say that one quality of this body is that on the basis of a body like that, a mental body can be achieved. But then when a mental body is achieved, it is achieved in the place or in this, where this body is. But then when this body is damaged, or when the body is killed, or when this body passes away, the mental body does not have to cease. It can still continue.
Dida nganzo pena thundro dawjin bayna tindrigi namju pegigita ten thumudas jambachina nganzo menanshingi jantu maras zam milaya mixig taji ani nushobi shetanchina mi thomo mi lebas lagoras ra ta khanji ani lebainandra zagndro tainandra kanji ani mi lutelaya ani tanda 토모망비 남주비기 잔주고 쌤다 니지다 직 동반이기 되려야 따뚱에 남주디 류데다야 제가 친구지 차여봐도 세우레스.
Well, an animal cannot use its intelligence in order to attain a body in the nature of mind. But we can do it as human beings. So you can say that even if we don't speak about it in relation to the mind as is spoken of in the Buddhist tradition, if you explain it on a physical level, at the level of the brain, or if you just explain it in the form of how we use our mind, how we use our wisdom or intelligence to do that, the point is that we, on the basis of this body, we can develop an intelligent mind that can then attain a body that is in the nature of mind, which is done on the basis of body like that.
Thank you, Kulawachi. Yes.
So at which stage will you attain that? Which path or which ground? Chazan salangi namshadi tewaina igi ranshingi lo kaditogires.
Tonlam kalaya chan ni tewachimbi tonlam kal ni togure sonora.
From the Mahayana path of seeing.
Okay. You need that.
Hmm. All right. So, is it that the Buddhists have a sense of closeness or warmness to sentient beings because they see the good qualities? Because they enable to see that we as sentient beings, we have qualities, qualities of mind. And in our training, we are training to see the good qualities of others rather than paying attention to the faults of others. We train in seeing the good qualities of others. So is it that because of that, then Buddhas, having completed the training, they have a sense of closeness and warmness to sentient beings? So even if you can say that our minds are exposed to Buddhas and they see also our faults, still they can see also, they can trace some steps that lead to their seeing of how good qualities can be developed from that. So is it because of that that they have a sense of closeness to all? Dila 상계 된서 semchin tamchen nyen sigirwa di ngaso tamche la yonteng de cha yonteng gi cha yoba di tonne nyen da wo chagirves pena ngaso la kyuntan yonten niga yorwa ni ngaso nangyu kyun mata yonten yani yandu tasen chi labja chi sigirwa chi 상계 된서 yonten yane yanda tonwa ina dila tene niende dawo chi ngaso tongirves ngaso yang kyunden de siwa ina ni kyundila tene yamana kyundila tene jamala yonten ke sigires samne gonne niente dawo chagirves
산지다 연대 게 연대 용수 조버was 아니 산지 투기라 연대 기에 쳐동안줄에 년다 고스다 기호마로사
마레
뭐든지라마사
마레 상게 텐소 ngaso tewa ina ro ngaso la yonten
통 시기로 만줄 연대 여버 시기리 만줄이야 만줄피기 아 따지 차단기 샤원도 교대 여버티야 시고레스 이내 산기 년도 세야디 연대 기타와 균전 티치고 있어 말이스 산기 차단기 로용스 돌바인자 피기 아 펜바지마도 산기를 내야지 지요 말았대 아 진짜 년 샤워라스 난줄에 소술에 펜번 바시 칭인데 년 다투고도 왔어 내 마징인데 년 다투고도 왔어
Buddha seeing others as being close to the heart with a sense of oneness. It can be explained in relation to seeing the good qualities of others, but not just because of that. We often divide other living beings into friends and enemies in relation to benefit and harm that we get from them. So for Buddhas, the Buddhas do not receive harm from others. You consider they are only benefited by others rather than receiving harm from them. So you can also add that reason for holding others as being dear to Buddhas, because they receive only benefit from them. They don't receive any harm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do the dedication verses. Gewadi nyududa lama sanje drugyune rowa chikamalupa
Tesa lango barasho
chanchu
zemjo rumboche maje banon che gyurchi kewa nyamba me kone kondu pewarasho kowe shengamso pendan dewa malu jongwe ne chenre sewa tenzen kyanzo shabe sindi bardu tengyuru chi chamjin jamgun gyawe tenzin gyong bewe gong solo chosum kowe le mandu yu pa da so du shin kun do shab den shu.
Thank you.